Every year around June and July, curious old cars begin to appear on the roads around Carlow Laois in Kildare. These ancient contraptions with their goggle-eyed drivers and enormous headlights include some English, some Australian, some Americans, all who take their holidays each year and come to Ireland to celebrate the biggest outdoor sporting event in Irish history, and the event that is said to have saved the sport of motor racing worldwide.
It really is terribly important. It's perhaps the key event in the history of motorsport, leading to what we have today.
Mr. Galloway Weir has suggested that policemen should be armed with lassos to catch motorists, the destructive wretches who care no more for human life than they do for flies. It is a wonderful proposal, but is open to objection.
The event they celebrate is the 1903 Irish-based Gordon Bennett Cup race, the brainchild of an eccentric American newspaperman who conceived the Cup as an international race at a time when cars in Ireland were a rare sight on any track or road anywhere. But the race would become one of the most important in the history of racing worldwide.
That young fella thinks he's going fast, but in 1903 I watched cars passing along this road, making hardly as much noise but considerably more speed. And the surface on which they achieved it was a dust, crudely metalled road, not the tarmac-adam achievement of today. I saw local people flee in terror and dive over ditches as belching monsters, their drivers devil-like above the clouds of summer dust rounded the corners.
It was a huge event in this area. I think it was one of the biggest gathering of spectators for any event ever in Ireland. You know, it was the Gordon Bennett race.
The motor car has created almost a reign of terror in Paris. The drivers tear through the streets, disregarding the rules of the road and darting around corners at full speed, regardless of the danger to the public and caring only for their own safety.
Gordon Bennett, believing that national rivalry was the best way to push on design and sell his newspapers reporting the race, approached the French initially to hold the race, as they were then the world's leaders in motor manufacture. And for the first two races of 1900 and 1901, the French dominated as expected. What was not expected was the Australian-born ex-cyclist Selwyn F. Edge winning for England in 1902. That win meant the race should now be held in the UK. But this was not possible, as the United Kingdom had a ban on motor racing on all public roads and a speed limit of 12 miles per hour. But R.J. Macready, former cyclist and editor of Dublin Motor News and the UK Automobile Association, suggested a solution to the English problem: Ireland. The Irish could, with a change of legislation, hold the race even though there were barely 200 cars in all of Ireland. Roads would need repair and money would have to be found for that, but nevertheless they went ahead. And Lord Scott Montague, a celebrated automobilist, helped shepherd the Light Locomotive Ireland Bill through Parliament in record time, which allowed for unlimited speed for one day and the gift of absolving the county councils from the cost of road improvements.
Mr. Healy proposed a resolution in favour of the automobile race. He said the councils of Kildare, Queen's and Carlow counties have all given their sanctions to the project, and it is well known that the race, being run in Ireland, would confer a great benefit,
Mr. O'Hanlon,
to the undertaker.
A course was picked out from roads around Athy, taking in Kilcullen, Castledermot, Carlow, Stradbelly, Monasterevin and Kildare and back to Athy, in 2 loops, making up a race of approximately 350 miles.
For Mercedes-Benz, the 1903 Gordon Bennett race held in Ireland was a milestone in our motorsports history. Mercedes-Benz in Stuttgart in 1903 was called Daimler Motorengesellschaft, and Daimler had already won many other races in previous years with their Mercedes cars, but none was as prestigious as the 1903 Gordon Bennett race.
Since the course for the Gordon Bennett race has been finally determined upon by the committee appointed for that purpose, gangs of busy workmen can be seen daily busily engaged in putting the different defective parts of the road into the best condition possible.
The roads have improved so much. They're like a slate now along here. And that time they would rake the big stones over to put light gravel on it for the cars.
Where the trees overhung the road or the hedges were too wide, they cut in order to give the people a chance of seeing the race.
Brian King's family owned land on either side of the moat of Ardskull, and they had memories of them having to be part of the preparations for the race.
Our home farm is the next farm to the moat of Ardskull, and my uncle's farm was down the road, maybe 500 metres the other direction, so two neighbours later married, if you know what I mean. So the only thing they had with the race was preparing the road for it, a stretch of the road. The Fitzpatricks would have kept the stone on the road prior to the race. So there was a lot of work to get the road. It was brought to a higher standard than normal. Just like folklore at home, it was such an amazing thing. It was like seeing a space rocket to them. Like there was nothing like it before. Cars were so rare up until the 30s, but it was such a big thing. Like it was the start of it.
And how did Brian's grandparents view these newfangled inventions?
I believe they were scared of them to some extent. It was something that considered them dirty, noisy, smoky, vulgar and for the rich, really.
The Automobile Association decided to run a complete closed road system, something that was not normally done at that time. They had prevailed on the use of the police and army as well as stewards to close every single road and ban people access during the race. This was to be the salvation of the race and racing in general. Why? Because in the run-up to the Irish event, another major motor race was just starting on the continent, and they employed none of the restrictions of the proposed Irish race, with tragic consequences, which would cause all of Europe to question the wisdom of racing cars at all.
The other major event of 1903 was the Paris to Madrid race, which was intended to be the greatest of all the city-to-city races. However, it was a total disaster. We had nearly 300 entries, and the cars were very quick. Cars were capable of 70, 80 miles an hour at that time. And people lined the roads, literally, while the cars were going by at that speed. And it was so bad that by the time the cars got to Bordeaux, the authorities stepped in and stopped it. The cars were ignominiously towed behind horse and carts to the train and sent back to Paris on the train. And it looked like that was the end of motor racing forever.
The series of disasters that marred the first stage of the motor race has convinced even the most enthusiastic automobilists that motor racing in its present form has ceased to be a legitimate form of sport and is doomed to immediate extinction.
But despite the anger and dire predictions and high-level English pressure, with the racing being banned everywhere else in Europe, the Irish race was allowed to go ahead.
They said, well, you know, we're getting around these problems because there's going to be a closed circuit and we're drafting in 2,300 RIC men to keep control of the crowds. So very much against the will of a lot of authorities, but not in Ireland, the race went ahead.
All focus of the anti-racing lobby worldwide would now be focused on Ireland and the Irish Gordon Bennett Cup. Any slip-up, and it could mean the end of all racing, just as the bans began to be imposed across Europe. Meanwhile, the competitors were beginning to arrive, some of whom had been in that ill-fated Paris race, and they were getting out to view the course as soon as they could.
The contestants went over the course for the couple of days beforehand to become familiar with it, Oh, you could see them practicing. You wouldn't know them though, except they didn't carry anything to identify themselves.
England's Charles Jarrett, in his own account of the race, talked of the hazards of the Irish roads.
One thing we discovered were that the roads in Ireland were used as farmyards for the breeding of chickens and other birds and beasts. Whenever we killed a chicken, we made a point of finding the owner and compensating him for his loss. A price was paid and the owner kept the carcass. But the number of chickens killed rose daily, which led him to suspect he paid more than once for the same chicken.
Unfortunately, just 3 weeks before the race, Daimler's factory here in Stuttgart, along with the 3 racing cars, were destroyed in a fire. So Daimler had to buy or borrow 3 vehicles from their customers. And even though these cars had only 60 horsepower engines, Daimler was sure with its lower centre of gravity they had a fighting chance of winning the race. However, these cars also had to be prepared for the race. Now there was too little time to send them off to Ireland by train as was planned, so the 3 Mercedes drivers along with their riding mechanics had to drive through France from Stuttgart and then continue by ferry on to Ireland.
The people of Carlow were thrown into a state of wild excitement on Monday by the arrival of motor cars, which kept dashing up the Dublin road all morning, and French and German cars and their crews attracted the most attention. The Americans seemed to be the most courteous and friendly of the lot. They cordially saluted the people en route, and their salutations were cordially returned, except in the case of most ladies, who considered the Yanks were horrid, free-making fellows.
Over 100 journalists had arrived, while motorists were arriving from all over Europe, from as far away as Budapest and Madrid. Complaints about high prices of everything were rife and causing anger.
I think there was a little bit of price gouging went on as well because they had a captive audience,
A seat in a jaunting car for 4 miles, 10 shillings per seat. A tuppenny glass of water was now 6pence, a wash-up at a farmyard pump 1 shilling, while a Belgian was charged £3 for a second-rate hotel in Athy, in addition to the £1 for his car.
Motor race, space to let in plots, with or without seats, on cutting at Youngstown.
Castledermot is the very best place to see the motor race, because visitors can see the cars pass 4
All
times.
persons who wish to see this great international contest to the best possible advantage should take care to provide themselves with a good field glass or telescope.
All 12 cars were now ready to race into history, and that would happen on the next day, 2nd of July 1903. For many in Ireland, tomorrow would be the first time that anyone had ever seen a car, let alone watch them race.
For the first time in our history, Ireland will be the envy of the sporting world. She has been selected as the battleground under which to decide the supremacy of the latest inventions to revolutionise locomotion. France, Germany, England and America will enter the list to fight out the battle of speed on the morning of the 2nd of July.